the second person is misidentifying the referent, the first person is correctly identifying the referent. So, how does this help our conversation here? In the same way, a Muslim can say God or Allah, intending to refer to the creator of the universe, but if the attributes they affirm or deny about that being are metaphysically incompatible with the real God of Christianity, they have misidentified the referent. They are not talking about the same thing, they're talking about something completely different, or perhaps something that's non existent. They're pointing to a completely different being, one that cannot, in principle, be the same as the Christian God, the one true God. Therefore, this argument doesn't really work because it assumes that we're talking about the same being when we're not. We're actually claiming that they believe in either a demon or no God at all, not a real one at least. Next one.
So this is actually the biggest lie. Like, so what if we're talking about the same God? Absolutely nothing follows from that. Absolutely nothing follows from that, because the distinctive between Christianity and Islam isn't there are differences with respect to the doctrine of God, but it's Jesus Christ and his saving power and his acts, his virgin birth, sinless life, atoning death, powerful resurrection. That's what sets Christianity apart from Islam. And so there's just no negative consequences that follow. Absolutely zero sociological consequences follow from the affirmative to the question that Jews and Christians and Muslims worship the same God.
Well, let's see about that. No, there actually are sociological consequences to claiming that Christians and Muslims worship the same God. Specifically, some sociological and psychological consequences of that. Let's say that, no, I don't know, there was a recent bombing of a Christian church or a recent massacre of Christians in Nigeria or another terrorist attack by Muslims against Christians, as seems to happen all the time. And if you want to have some good examples of that, check out Robert Spencer's Jihad Watch on YouTube. When you have these people, some of whom have survived while their entire families have died, and you look at them in the eye and say, well, those Muslims did that in the name of their God. And they worship the same God that we do. Hopefully you have enough common sense to understand how a claim like that at the sociological and psychological level can really lead to some serious turmoil and confusion. And I think you actually do know that because there's all of these qualifications that will happen from his side of things, from the other Catholic apologists in this video. Both of them will spend some time adding qualifications and qualifiers and explaining how there's no sociological change necessarily, and how this really doesn't imply any huge alteration to the way that we live and practice our faith. But the fact that they need to qualify it so much with a claim so general as we worship the same God seems to actually imply that there is a sociological and psychological consequence to that claim. Let's just go on to the next argument.
Yep, there we go. Clark Kent. This is actually a reply slide, a pre-reply. Okay. So no, that was it. The whole presentation.
So, again, there's a reason that I made my Superman analogy, and it was for this exact moment. The Islamic and Christian conceptions of God are super different. Well, this person would say, so? Lois Lane's conceptions of Clark Kent and Superman really are super different, yet both Clark Kent and Superman refer to Kal-El. Now, again, while that analogy is useful for explaining the Catholic position, it doesn't prove the Catholic position to be true. Because again, you could just use a different Superman analogy, like the Bizarro analogy that I used before, which explains that it's not the same being discussed at all. This analogy of Superman presupposes that it's the same being. And of course, you're allowed to do that. It's an analogy to explain your position. Just make sure you're understanding that it's not an argument in and of itself, right? Because I could also just give an analogy that shows Superman and Bizarro are not the same being, even if people might say that one is Superman and the other one is not, and they could misidentify. Really quick, let's go on to this next Catholic apologist argument, though, which I find a bit more interesting.
5 minutes. Right.
So I guess I agree with Trent, right, that this isn't actually a hard question. Christians and Muslims obviously worship the same God, and there's no good theory of linguistic reference or intentionality according to which they do not. Uh, as Trent,
Again, what he just said is that it's obvious that Christians and Muslims worship the same God. And he says there's no good theory of linguistic reference or intentionality, again, referencing Saul Kripke here, according to which they do not. But according to Saul Kripke's theory, he only explains that it is possible for people to refer to the same being and not that they obviously do worship or refer to the same being. Okay? That's a pretty strong jump to go from it's possible to it's sure and true. So to say there's no good theory of linguistic reference or intentionality according to which they do not, well, these theories of linguistic reference and intentionality do not make the case that the God of Christianity and the God of Islam are the same referent being. It only allows for it to be possible that they are the same referent being. But you need a lot more than just possibility to claim that they obviously worship the same God. Let's see what he tries to say.
Muslims obviously worship the same God, and there's no good theory of linguistic reference or intentionality according to which they do not. Uh, as Trent alluded to as well, I want to try to qualify immediately here by noting what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that there's any grace or salvation in the Islamic religion whatsoever. I'm not saying that any Muslims whatsoever are saved. Everything I'm saying here is consistent with the thesis that every Muslim.
No, that's actually not the case, but go on.
Has ever lived is in hell. I'm not saying that there are any good reasons to be Muslim whatsoever. I'm not saying that anybody can be saved without explicit divine faith in both the doctrines of the Trinity and the Incarnation. I don't think they can, as a good Thomist. I'm not saying that Christianity and Islam are merely distinct revealed extrapolations of some mere philosophical monotheism established by natural theology.
However, his debate partner, with the analogy of Superman and his multiple identities, because he's truly Kal-El, Superman and Clark Kent are different identities of him, that actually would seem to be the case, that these are distinct revealed extrapolations of some mere philosophical, Kal-El. The mere philosophical Kal-El expresses himself as Superman and Clark Kent, so that analogy seems to go against what he's saying here, and it seems to go against some of the Roman Catholic statements in other doctrines.
I'm not even sure what that claim amounts to. I've seen it going around. I totally reject it. I am also not saying that all monotheists worship the true God, right? So this isn't just a claim about all monotheists. I think there's something special about Islam, as with Judaism, that makes it the case that they worship the same God as Christians. I don't think, for example, Mormons worship the same God as.
Okay. He just claimed that Mormons do not worship the same God as Christians. Let's see about that. So, in reference to this slide right here and this moment during the debate, I wanted to actually show that there's some tension here with Roman Catholic Church teaching and what he's saying. So he says, I am not saying that there is any grace or salvation in the Islamic religion whatsoever, but Catholic teaching sharply contradicts, his claim. While Catholicism affirms the fullness of grace resides in Christ and the Church, Lumen Gentium 16, the Catechism of the Catholic Church, explicitly state that the plan of salvation also includes those who acknowledge the Creator, in the first place among whom are the Muslims. The plan of salvation, okay? So the Catholic Church teaches that Muslims can be recipients of grace, not through Islam as a salvific system, but despite it, by responding sincerely to God's call via the natural law and conscience, in appealing to the goodness found in Islam, so following Islam sincerely.